Hi everyone, welcome to the latest in our series of lockdown videos. Now today I'm joined by alumnus Rob Walker. Now Rob is a freelance network TV commentator and presenter who's got an energetic and instantly recognisable style. And over the last 21 years of his TV career, he's covered 7 Summer and Winter Olympic Games, 5 Paralympic Summer and Winter Games, and has been part of some of the most memorable sporting moments for both Britain and the world. Now he's perhaps best known for his coverage of major snooker tournaments, but you're also going to recognise his voice from athletics, from sailing, from football, from skiing, from darts, from numerous other sports. And you might have also been following his rather amusing online series Lockdown Live that he's been filming the last few weeks, but we'll come on to that later. So welcome, Rob. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Pleasure, Emma. Pleasure.
Now, I just want to start at the beginning a little bit. Now, you graduated from Exeter in English and drama and then went on to sports journalism. So I just wondered if you could share how your career developed.
Yeah, well, I think when I was young, I always wanted to try my hand at acting, and I loved reading and I loved writing and I loved sport. So it seemed logical to me. Exeter at that time, and I suspect it probably still is, one of, if not the best places in the country to study English and drama. So I came down, and like all the graduates, I had an amazing time. I did my 3 years, at the end of which I was fortunate enough to have a 4th year because I was president of the guild. And then I was coming to the end of that time, and I was kind of weighing up. I thought, well, how good do I think I am as an actor? And especially with a face like mine, I wasn't exactly going to roll into any heartthrob films or dramas. So my love of sport has always been there, especially running, which is why I fell in love with athletics and sport in the first place. So I wrote to West Country Television in the last couple of weeks of my year as president and said all the stuff that I'd done, and I'd written some sports articles for the Express and Echo during my tenure before I'd done my year as president. Anyway, I eventually, through their recommendation, ended up applying to Falmouth College of Arts for a postgrad diploma in broadcast journalism. At that time, Falmouth wasn't officially linked to Exeter, but of course I jumped at that opportunity because it was another chance to have a year in the Southwest. I loved the course. I made some amazing friends there. And then I was lucky, and I worked hard, I suppose. I kept in touch with the people at West Country Television who I'd gone to see for a week's work experience just at the end of my president time. And they took me on as a television sports reporter. I did a 1.5 years for that ITV region based in Plymouth on the Plimpton Industrial Estate. I don't even think it's there anymore. And then I did another 1.5 years at another ITV region in Bristol, working for HTV West, covering Bristol, Bath and Gloucester rugby, Bristol City, Bristol Rovers, Swindon and Cheltenham for football. And then the bright lights of London drew me in, and I did my Dick Whittington and went to work for BBC Sport for 3.5 years. And then I went freelance in the autumn of 2006, and I've been a jobbing commentator, reporter, occasional presenter ever since.
Okay, excellent. Now you mentioned obviously doing a postgrad. I mean, have you got any tips for anyone who was, wanting to break into the industry in terms of what they might do, work experience?
What I always say, I love going into schools and sixth forms and universities, and I always enjoy coming back to Exeter. And what I always say to any young person thinking of getting a job in TV or trying to make their living in any kind of broadcasting, and this might sound like a cliche, but you can't really put it any better than this, I don't think. There is no right or wrong way. There's the way that works for you. For any young person trying to embark on a career in media, and especially on television, whatever that means now, because so much of TV is integrated with what's online, there is no set formula. There is no pattern. There are some people who go straight into work experience at the age of 18 and don't even bother going to university. And I understand the reasons for that, with 50 grand's worth of debt or whatever it is that young people can come out with. So there are those who swear blind by coming out of A levels and going straight into work experience and learning the hard way. There are others who have done the traditional route. I suppose if you look at the way I've done it, it has been very traditional. But I'm 45, Emma, I'm not 25, and the industry has changed exponentially since I started in 1999. So there isn't a right or wrong way. So that means the choice to do a postgrad is entirely down to the individual. If I had to answer the question, would I be sitting here now, having done all the events that are kind of represented behind me, would I be where I am now if I had left Exeter and just tried to knock on the West Country TV door? I might have been. I'll never know the answer to that.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't do me any harm, because West Country, if you're looking back to my first job, they took me on because I'd been to Falmouth, and because I'd covered rugby for Pirate FM and football for Radio Cornwall. So I got off my backside and showed them that I wasn't just expecting them to take me on at the end of the postgrad. But one of the reasons they took me on is because they liked people who'd had the training at Falmouth. So for me, it definitely worked. But you will meet a whole host of other broadcasters, many of whom would be far higher profile than me, who just winged it from the age of 18, and that worked for them. There is no right or wrong way.
Cool. Now, moving on a little bit, obviously I can see behind you numerous lanyards of all the different events you've been to. Is there a favourite event that you've commentated on?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the Olympic Games. I've covered every Games since Athens, but such is the competitive nature of broadcasting, and such is the niche that athletics in particular occupies. I covered Athens, Beijing and London, and loved all three. Beijing and London. Well, actually, I say London. I was in Weymouth. I was the sailing reporter for the BBC for those two regattas, and had a fantastic time. The sailing community were unbelievably hospitable and welcoming and understanding of somebody new coming into the sport. But the whole reason I became a broadcaster was to commentate on the men's 1500 meters at the Olympic Games. And I had to wait until my fourth Games, Rio, to have that chance. I commentated I did all the track racing with an Australian guy. When you go to a major event, especially something global like the Olympic Games, you have what's called your domestic commentators. What I mean by that is, from a British point of view, that would be the commentary you would hear on the BBC. Yeah. It's very high profile. Those numbers are tiny in terms of the spots available. Yeah. Then you have what's called the world feed commentary. All that means is the governing body of an event will always provide an English-speaking commentary that is available and used by every single country in the world who do not have the resources or the expertise to put their own commentators in that stadium. So I did the world feed athletics commentary in Rio. So for instance, my commentary was live in New Zealand, all across the Caribbean, the English-speaking countries in Africa, India. I believe some of it may have gone out in Canada as well, and even some South American countries. So Rio was the culmination of a lifelong dream for me. And that, if my house was burning down, apart from my wife and son getting out, that would be coming with me. That is my 1500 meters. That's my start sheet from the men's 1500 meter final.
Wow.
And I have that in my office. And as I said, if my house was burning down, once my wife and son got out, my start sheet from Rio would come with me, because it was the defining moment of my career. And actually, when I was commentating on the race, when I introduced the race, only people who would know me very well would have been able to tell by the tone of my voice, because obviously you can't be seen when you're commentating. Yeah. I was nearly crying. The magnitude of the moment was not lost on me whilst it was happening. Usually I think when you do something momentous in your life, if it involves quite a lot of concentration in the moment that you're actually doing it, I think it's only afterwards generally that you appreciate what you've done and really the position you've been in. But it was unusual for me, because before the race began, I almost couldn't say, and now the final of the men's 1500 meters.
Wow.
Yeah, so without a shadow of a doubt, commentating on the athletics at the Olympic Games. And you know what? The fact that I had to wait until Rio, my 4th Games, to do that made it all the more special.
Wow, that's great. And when you're commentating on stuff like that, do you have like a list of facts and figures in front of you, or do you just memorize, you just know things? I'm just thinking, because as you're commentating, you tend to be able to just pull out kind of key bits of information that the likes of me would have no idea about. I mean, have you researched all that in advance?
Yes, it's both. I'm really old school. I mean, you've got to remember, in '97, when I graduated, you could still hand in all your essays handwritten, which I did. I never owned a computer until the middle of the noughts, whatever you call that, because when I went to the BBC, I used the computer that was in front of me. It was only when I became self-employed. I was 31 when I bought a laptop. So I've always been pretty old school, and I find I can memorize things much more efficiently if I have physically written it down somewhere.
Yeah.
So I would spend, again, just to use the Olympics or a World Championships in athletics as an example, before I go to a World Champs, I would spend, on average, between 8 and 10 hours a day here in my office, working in total silence, analysing how the season has gone in every event. Because obviously with athletics in particular, 100 meters, 200, 400, 4 hurdles, 110 hurdles, steeplechase, 5,000, 10,000, triple jump, shot put, long jump, javelin. You've got almost 30 events, and you double it because you've got the same events for women as you have for men. So I spend a massive amount of time researching before I go to a champs. Probably you could get away without that research. However, that's what marks you out, hopefully, from the other commentators, that it's amazing from where you almost don't know, but you have a reminder sheet in front of you, like the start sheet I just showed you for the men's 15 from Rio. But in the heat of the moment, when you're looking at the track and you're not looking at the piece of paper in front of you, it's amazing how many of those stats just come back to you. I don't know why, but without that diligent prep, that wouldn't happen. So I do a massive amount of homework before I go to a champs. And I don't know how you work or how everyone else works, but my wife always concentrates with music on. I work in total silence. I always have done. And I've only got background noise on when I know I'm packing up and I've finished for the day. So I'm really, really disciplined about that. And I think as a commentator, you're almost doing, if you don't do your homework, you're doing 2 sets of people a gross injustice. One, the athletes themselves, because runners and sportsmen and women of all disciplines, they work so hard for that one chance to shine. And the least they deserve is for you to get their information right. And obviously, from a wider point of view, if you want the public to be excited about something, you've got to know what you're talking about. And there are some real statos out there. And if you make mistakes, obviously you've got to make a few slip-ups here and there. That's part of the nature of being live on TV for 3 hours at a time. You're not going to get everything right every minute of the day. But, if you make a series of glaring errors, someone's going to put that on social media very quickly. Yeah. So there is no shortcut for the hard work. The commentating is almost the fun bit. Yeah. I'm not a real stato type guy. I don't like sitting in my office for 10 hours a day for 12 days before I go to a champs. But I know that I'll enjoy the moment that the event unfolds so much more, knowing that I feel relaxed, that I'm properly prepared.
Yeah, and it definitely does make a difference from a viewing point of view, for sure.
Yeah, good.
Now, I want to change the subject a little bit, because obviously we've been in lockdown for 4 weeks, is it? I can't even remember now. And a few weeks ago, you started doing these lockdown live videos. Now, when I introduced you, I mentioned your presenting style. It's very recognisable, and you've been doing these great voiceovers over clips that people have been sending in. I mean, what gave you the idea to do this?
Well, it's been funny, because as I said, I've been a broadcaster for 21 years, but unless you're a really big name, which I'm not, you don't tend to get interviewed very often. I've done more interviews about lockdown live than I have in the last probably 5 or 6 years of my career. CNN, 5 Live Breakfast, Chris Evans, Virgin, Talk Sport, BBC News. It's been mad. Basically, I was sitting around kind of moaning, I guess, to my wife, and I was explaining the severity of the situation for us. I'm very lucky that I've got some savings, but for anybody self-employed out there, this is absolute carnage at the moment. Every single bit of my work that was in my diary and written into a contract for probably the next 4 or 5 months, everything's gone. So I was sitting around explaining to my wife, okay, you know, we're fine. Well, I'm going to drag this money from here and da-da-da-da-da-da. And she just turned to me and said, look, I know you're going to take care of the money. Stop moaning and focusing on what you can't do and focus on what you can do. And she works in a school. And she said to me, look, it's going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of families where the children are either consciously or subconsciously going to be looking to the adults around them for some kind of reassurance and semblance of normality in the face of an unprecedented situation. So you're quick enough to take the mickey out of me when I come down the stairs tired. She's not a morning person and I am. So sometimes I find it quite amusing to commentate on her. Well, here comes the 42-year-old, of course, well, from Chesterfield, now residing in the Cotswolds, and she's looking a little crabby to me. I think she might need a little dose of caffeine. Anyway, so I'm always horsing around like that in the house. So Becky said to me, look, you're quick enough to take the mickey out of me coming down the stairs looking moody. Why don't you focus on asking people, why don't you focus on the games and the sports that families are going to be doing all over the place? So then I came up with this idea of Lockdown Live. I thought, right, well, why don't I get people to send me their footage? Because every single house in Britain, barring people who are probably 90 or something, and even most of them have got phones, every single house in Britain has access to at least one of these. That means every single house has a camera and a microphone, and they are their own cameraman or camera woman. So yeah, I just sort of put it out there and said, listen, this is what I'm going to do. It's a bit of fun. It's not going to break any records. It's not going to probably go viral. Get in touch. Send me whatever you've been up to. Give me some basic biographical information on who we're looking at. Tell us the rules if you've made up something completely random, because I can't commentate on it unless I've got some vague idea of what the hell's going on. And I'll add the commentary. So I started it. We've been on every single weekend of lockdown because fortuitously I spoke to 2 guys who live in another village a couple miles down the road. And I told them, I've worked with them for many years. And I said, look, guys, I've had this mad idea. You're either going to run a mile. I can't pay you for it. No, we probably won't make any money out of it. But I think we might be able to sort of make a bit of a connection with the public a little bit. And they went, yeah, love it. So they put a camera and some lights in my office at home. And that's how it began. So yeah, it's kind of mad really. And then we're talking to you right now. IMG got in touch. They're a massive media company.
Yeah.
And nothing may come of this. I really don't know, but they really like the concept, and they're in the process of pitching it to some quite big firms to try and come in and widen it out, because it's very organic at the moment. Something may come of that, something may not, but it's a hell of a lot better than sitting around feeling sorry for yourself, moaning about what you can't do. So I guess my wife giving me a kick up the posterium was quite a good idea.
Definitely. I mean, some of them are really funny. It was one in particular. There's a bloke eating trifle that I was watching the other day, which made me laugh. I found myself being like, "Come on, eat the trifle, eat the trifle."
I was nearly sick when I watched that one. I could feel that man's pain. Do you know? It reminded me of drinking games at Exeter. It really did. I could just envisage a load of students sitting around going, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do that," and then if you can't do it in a minute, you've got to do a shot of tequila or something. Crazy.
Have you got a favourite clip that people have sent you over the weeks?
Yeah, I think just for sheer observational humour, this lady sent me in footage of, it looked like it was just a doorway and a load of pigeons walking around. And she explained in her notes, whatever reason, she's living in Venice, and she realised that the pigeons were not getting any bread because there were no tourists there.
Yeah.
And bakeries are deemed, they're deemed valid to stay open because it's a basic product. You have to be able to get bread. And she noticed queuing up for bread at this bakery that there were loads of pigeons there all the time. And it was quite amusing. She was watching them, trying to pluck up courage to walk over the doorway, because the baker behind the counter was giving out crumbs, but he would only give crumbs to the ones who were brave enough to go in.
Oh, I see.
But as she stood there, I just got this footage. I say, if you didn't know the context and where she was and what the doorway represented, it would be the most boring bit of footage you've ever seen. Some people might think it is, but I found it absolutely captivating. And so for 2 minutes, you're just looking at these pigeons, and one would get close, and then it would just get spooked at the last minute and turn away. And then eventually one got over the little doorway, and I commentated on it a bit like it was a high jump competition. Oh, and he's pulled up short. He's just run out of confidence. Oh, this is brilliant. And just that is so, the context of that is so utterly random.
Yeah.
It just makes you realise that if you have the right material, you could literally commentate on anything. So I did.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Now, before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you one, well, maybe two questions. We'll see how we go time-wise.
All right.
Obviously, because of lockdown, no mass gatherings, no sport, as you've mentioned. I mean, what sort of impact do you think this might have on sport in the longer term, if any?
That is so hard to know, because none of us have ever been in this situation before. I think, to begin with, perhaps, there is so much money on the line from broadcasting rights and all that associated business element of sport, that I think we may have to get used in the short term, when we do get back to watching elite sport. To begin with, I think there's no question we're going to be watching sport happening with nobody there.
Yeah.
Because they won't be prepared to run that risk. They won't want to lose the broadcasting rights. They won't want to lose the broadcasting money. And if you think about it, we as a world, as a species, have been starved of just about every single piece of elite sport. I mean, there's some indoor darts going on, but in terms of anything that happens outdoors, we have been starved of it for months. So even though it will be very odd, let's say football gets going first, because it's the most lucrative sport in the world, I think. The viewing figures would be absolutely enormous. So the sports and the business of sport will look at that as a fantastic opportunity, even though when you do sit down to watch your favourite team, knowing that the stand is empty will be very strange.
Yeah.
Listen, the ramifications of this could last for a long time. We could, I should have been in Tokyo for 7 weeks this year for the Olympics and then the Paralympics. My contracts have been changed. I've signed them and sent them back, and it's 2021, as we know. And I hope with all my heart that I am in Tokyo in July of 2021. But at the moment where we're sitting, we don't know that, and technology is so good that the quality of your commentary is always better when you are at the event, partly because you drink in so much information from your peripheral vision. If you're restricted to commentating only what the director shows you, the audience, and the commentator, you can still do a good job, but you're not able to take in those extra little nuggets. Somebody off camera looking nervous, or warming up, or pulling their hamstring 10 minutes before their heat of the 100 meters, or 10 minutes before they come on as a sub in a football match. So we might end up in a situation where I could be sitting in front of these, commentating on something that's happening thousands of miles away, because the technology exists that you can do the commentary remotely. Yeah. And again, if you look at an Olympic Games, if you suddenly say only minimal people in Tokyo and everybody else from home, you're then taking away 10,000 more families who might be at risk of a relative bringing something back from a foreign trip. So who knows? We're in a totally bizarre situation. And I think from the point of view of somebody self-employed in sports, I've got to work on a worst case scenario and work backwards from there. So if I'm working properly again by Christmas, I'll be happy with that. And if it's the autumn and it's September, I'll be extra happy with that. But look, it is what it is. And we've got to let the NHS and all the other medical people around the world just get on with getting us all back to normal. What that normality will be, who knows?
Wow.
That was deep.
I know, I haven't really got anywhere to go from there now. I mean, I'm a big Formula One fan, and they've been doing virtual races, which is all very bizarre. And talking about, like you say, starting the season with no spectators, which will be.
I think they'll be. Formula One is a good example. There's no doubt that I don't know how many. I don't watch Formula One, but I know it's huge. At least some of those races, when they start again, will have empty stands.
Yeah.
But people like you will still tune in because you will have been starved of it for months. So the viewing figures will be enormous, even though there's no actual atmosphere from the stands. Yeah,
it's going to be very strange. Very strange. Well, hopefully we'll be starting to see some sport of some sort in the not too distant future.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if we got some, well, they're calling it behind closed doors, aren't they?
Yeah.
If we got some behind closed doors sport by, say, July, maybe that would be a winning scenario, because obviously they still haven't finished the Six Nations either. No. So that's scheduled for the end of October, because there were matches that couldn't be finished in March. So there's all sorts of ramifications. Yeah. It's going to be a bizarre second half of the year, that's for sure, because everything's going to be happening out of sequence.
Most definitely. Right, well, I will let you go. Get on with your commentating for the week.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for joining me, Rob, and we will be back with more videos very soon.
Cool. No worries.